Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take compelling sources, intriguing articles, and in-depth research, and we really unpack them for you. We want to offer you a shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's not just complex, but, well, deeply, deeply charged, full of emotion and intense political scrutiny.
Absolutely.
What does it truly take for a political leader to be described with such stark, critical language? And maybe more importantly, what does that tell us about the pressures and perceptions of power in a really complex geopolitical landscape?
That's a great framing question.
Yeah, that's the fundamental question we'll explore as we navigate what I think is a truly provocative piece of writing.
Indeed. For this deep dive, we're focusing on an article from Democracy for Nepal. Now, this is an online publication, and it positions itself as a pretty vocal advocate for democracy and social justice movements within the country. The article itself is titled, Hey, Lazen, so where's the Povak read? Which translates in English to, Why is KP Oli called a fool?
Right. So you can immediately sense this isn't your average news report.
Not at all. It's highly critical, very opinionated. It reflects some really strong sentiments and, a particular perspective within the Nepali political discourse.
Exactly. And our mission today is, I think, very clear. We're here to be your expert guides through this intensely charged material.
Right.
We're going to dissect the specific accusations, the historical claims, the geopolitical analyses that this particular article presents. And we want to be absolutely clear here. We are not here to endorse or refute any of these claims ourselves. Our role is strictly to help you understand the specific perspective and the arguments laid out in this source material.
Exactly. The goal is comprehension.
We want you to walk away with a comprehensive, nuanced understanding of this particular viewpoint and, the rationale behind the author's very strong conclusions.
And this source, it's less about detached reporting, It's more about a passionate, sometimes even furious argument.
Right.
It's filled with vivid language, strong assertions. It really serves as a forceful articulation of grievances and critiques.
So as we navigate through these points, we'll try to connect them to broader themes. Things like governance, national interest, regional diplomacy.
Yeah, and always keeping in mind the powerful rhetoric the author uses and why it might resonate with, certain segments of the public.
Okay, let's begin our exploration then. Let's tackle what the article lays out as its most fundamental criticisms. These deeply serious allegations of corruption and mismanagement.
Right.
The source opens directly with an incredibly powerful, immediate accusation. It's one that's designed to instantly grab your attention and set a tone of, profound betrayal. It states, and I quote, "It was KP Oli who sold the Mahakali River." Now, that is far from a casual remark. It's presented as a foundational, almost cardinal act of betrayal right from the very start.
What's immediately striking there is how the article just sets this urgent tone. Disillusionment, distrust. You feel it right away.
Yeah.
And the act of selling a river, it isn't framed as just, say, an administrative decision or some economic transaction, which could be controversial enough.
Sure.
Instead, it's framed as a profound betrayal of national patrimony.
Yeah.
Something, intrinsic, almost sacred to the country itself.
And for Nepal, that must be huge. Rivers are central, aren't they?
Absolutely. For Nepal, a nation so reliant on its Himalayan rivers, water is often called white gold. These aren't just resources. They're seen as the lifeblood of the nation, symbols of national identity, crucial for the future.
So when the article claims they were sold.
Exactly. It taps into these deep-seated nationalistic anxieties, historical grievances about resource sharing, especially with powerful neighbors like India.
That's incredibly powerful context. So it's not just about the money. It's about compromising the very essence of the nation's natural wealth, maybe even its sovereignty.
Precisely. That's the implication.
And the article doesn't stop there, does it? It really expands on this, cementing the narrative of betrayal with more examples.
It does. It claims the one who sold Tanakpur is that same Kali Yuga Brahmin. And then it adds, the one who sold Pancheshwar was also Oli.
That repetition of sold, Mahakali River, Tanakpur, Pancheshwar, it really hammers home the perceived gravity, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
The deliberate, repeated use of sold, it's a powerful rhetorical device. It's meant to emphasize the immense scale of the alleged betrayal, the depth of the author's outrage.
And that term Kali Yuga Brahmin, that sounds loaded.
Oh, it's deeply loaded, especially in a Hindu-majority society like Nepal. In Hindu cosmology, the Kali Yuga is the current age, often seen as an age of moral degradation, conflict, a decline in dharma. you know.
Right. The Dark Age, sort of.
Kinda, yeah. So calling someone a Kali Yuga Brahmin isn't just a political insult. It carries profound cultural and moral weight.
Why specifically a Brahmin?
Well, Brahmins in Nepal's historically caste-based society held this revered position. Priests, educators, moral guides. They were expected to embody intellect, asceticism, ethical principles.
Okay.
So, to label a Brahmin as Kali Yuga is basically accusing them of the ultimate hypocrisy, moral bankruptcy. It suggests they've betrayed not just their political office, but their sacred duty. They've become an agent of the very degradation the Kali Yuga represents.
Wow. So it's a cultural and spiritual weapon, not just political.
Far more potent than a purely political slur, yeah. It implies this fundamental corruption of character, not just policy.
So if we take these specific allegations selling rivers projects and add this deeply personal cultural attack, what does this imply about how the public might perceive a leader's role in safeguarding national resources?
Well, it raises a critical question about the social contract, doesn't it? Especially in a developing nation. When natural resources like rivers, seen as symbols of national identity, sovereignty, the nation's lifeblood, when they're alleged to have been sold, it evokes an incredibly strong emotional response.
I can imagine.
It implies the leader hasn't just failed in their basic duty to protect the nation's heritage, but has actively bartered it away for personal gain or maybe external interest.
And that erodes trust.
Severely. It makes people think their leader is putting personal profit or foreign interests above the nation's long-term well-being. And these allegations, they resonate deeply, tapping into collective memories of past resource agreements, like the Kosi and Gandak treaties with India, which many Nepalese felt were unequal.
Ah, so there's historical context amplifying it.
Exactly. It makes the selling narrative incredibly potent, emotionally charged.
And it gets even more tangible, doesn't it? The article links these alleged sales directly to Oli's personal wealth.
Yes, it states, and you quoted it, he is living in a palace, Bilawater Palace. It wasn't built with his parliamentary salary. It was built with the money from selling rivers.
That's where it gets really interesting, connecting abstract acts to a very concrete, visible symbol.
Absolutely. And what's compelling is the direct cause and effect the author explicitly draws. This claim is potent because it transforms these abstract allegations into this tangible image.
Yeah.
A leader living in opulence, allegedly funded illicitly.
And below water isn't just any house.
No, it's the official residence of the Prime Minister of Nepal, a symbol of national power, responsibility. So for the article to claim this structure was built with money from selling rivers, it implies a clear quid pro quo, national assets traded for personal gain.
For the listener, it makes the abstract idea of corruption very real.
Much more relatable, yes. And for those who believe the accusation, deeply infuriating. It's an effective rhetorical strategy, really, to concretize the abstract.
So when a leader's residence, something so symbolic, is perceived not as a seat of governance, but as a monument to corruption, what does that do to their legitimacy, to public trust?
Oh, it's devastating. Absolutely devastating. When a symbol like Bilawater Palace becomes linked in the public mind to corruption, to being built with money from selling rivers, it profoundly damages trust, not just in the leader, but in government, in political institutions as a whole.
It breeds cynicism.
Deep-seated cynicism, resentment. People start questioning the integrity of the entire system. It suggests leaders are self-serving, enriching themselves at the nation's expense, not serving the public good.
That must have a huge psychological impact.
Immense. It can lead to widespread disengagement, apathy, or, conversely, a surge in populist anger against the establishment. It really undermines the foundation of democratic governance.
Okay, so these initial allegations of corruption paint a picture of a leader prioritizing personal gain. It lays a heavy foundation for the critique. But the article doesn't stop at financial impropriety. It then takes us into an equally contentious arena, the very definition of Nepal's borders, and how history itself becomes a battleground. Which leads us to our next section. So we've covered the heavy financial allegations, the perceived betrayal of national assets. Now let's dive into this fascinating, often contentious world of borders and historical claims as seen through the eyes of this article.
Okay.
The source dismisses a specific pointed map, the chutiya, often associated with Oli, which became a symbol of nationalism during his tenure. It declares that pointed map is nothing more than Oli's nose. That's highly sarcastic, almost derisive, isn't it?
It's undoubtedly a pointed insult, yeah. And what's fascinating is how the author uses this vivid, almost comical imagery to completely devalue a symbol that, for some, represents national pride, a legitimate territorial assertion.
Tell us more about that map.
Well, the chutiya actually refers to a revised map of Nepal issued back in 2020. It included areas like Lipulek, Kalapani, and Limpiadhura areas claimed by both Nepal and India.
Contentious areas, then.
Very. So, by likening this cartographic claim to merely Oli's nose, the author reduces it to a personal characteristic of the leader may be inflated, self-aggrandizing. They strip it of any genuine national significance, in their view.
Implying it was more about political posturing.
Exactly. More about Oli's personal politics than a sincere, effective assertion of national territory. That's the implication.
And to really underscore the perceived futility of just drawing maps, the author takes it further. They state, if just drawing maps could bring land, then I want land from Testa in the east to Kangra Fort in the west.
Yeah, that's a bold, almost audacious counterargument.
It directly challenges the idea that maps alone are enough, doesn't it, without concrete action or historical backing.
It's a powerful rhetorical move, challenging what the author sees as superficial nationalism. Performative nationalism, maybe?
What's the significance of Testa and Kangra Fort?
Those references allude to the extent of Nepal's territory before the Treaty of Sugauli in 1816, which significantly reduced its size. The author is essentially saying, if simply drawing a map works, why not draw one for Greater Nepal?
I see. It's hyperbole to make a point.
Precisely. It conveys their disdain for what they see as empty, symbolic gestures lacking substance or a viable strategy for actually getting the land back. They're suggesting territorial claims need more than lines on paper, historical consistency, diplomatic strategy, maybe even military resolve, none of which, in their view, Oli genuinely pursued.
It highlights their skepticism towards purely symbolic actions.
Definitely.
That's a crucial point. The source then moves on to challenge common understandings of historical borders, asking, in the 1816 treaty, even the Madhas wasn't part of Nepal. Have you forgotten that? This question is clearly rhetorical, aimed at exposing what the author sees as selective memory or historical ignorance.
And connecting this to the broader history, this detail is absolutely crucial for understanding the immense complexity of Nepal's boundaries, especially concerning the Terai region, the Madhas.
Tell us about that treaty.
The 1816 Treaty of Sugauli dramatically reshaped Nepal's borders after the Anglo-Nepalese War. Nepal ceded vast territories to British India Kumaran, Garhwal, parts of the Terai.
Okay.
Now, some Terai lands, the Naya Muluk, or New Country, were later returned in 1860 for Nepal's help during the Indian Rebellion. But the author's point is about the original post-Sugauli boundaries.
So they're saying current claims might ignore inconvenient facts.
Implicitly, yes. They're suggesting that those making territorial claims today may be driven by nationalism, might be overlooking parts of history that don't fit the narrative.
It introduces the idea that history can be interpreted selectively.
Right. Especially to bolster contemporary political arguments. Understanding the full, unvarnished context is vital. It implicitly questions the consistency of Oli's claims by highlighting a historical fact that might undermine other narratives. Like, if we care so much about borders, shouldn't we remember all of our history?
Even the complicated parts.
Especially the complicated parts. It's a call for intellectual honesty in historical arguments, particularly when they define national territory and identity.
It forces a critical look at how history is used, maybe manipulated in politics.
Exactly. Recognizing the layered, often contested nature of historical memory in nation building.
The source then shifts focus slightly, offering a nuanced perspective on India's role. It states, when India became independent, it accepted the borders it inherited. Whether those borders were right or wrong, that's another matter. It's not like independent India carried out military operations and seized Nepal's land. It simply accepted what the British gave. This provides a very specific counter-narrative to accusations of post-colonial Indian aggression, doesn't it?
It's a very important point for understanding the author's perspective on regional dynamics. It aims to avoid a simplistic blame game.
How so?
It directly counters potential claims that independent India aggressively encroached on Nepali territory. The source carefully argues that India's current borders with Nepal were primarily a legacy of British colonial rule and inheritance from the Raj, not a result of active post-independence military action or land grabs by the new Indian state.
So it shifts the focus of blame.
Yes, away from independent India and onto the colonial past. It subtly reframes the narrative of current border disputes. It implies India, in the author's view, just maintained the status quo it inherited, rather than actively pursuing expansionist policies against Nepal after 1947.
And this really encourages critical thinking, prompting us, the listeners, to consider the distinction between historical inheritance and active aggression.
It absolutely does. How those different origins might influence contemporary disputes and diplomacy.
It challenges assumptions about how borders form and are maintained.
Right. By pointing to the colonial legacy, the author urges a more nuanced understanding. It suggests that, for this author, some historical grievances are directed more towards the colonial powers and their legacy than towards independent India, whose actions in this specific context are seen as reactive, not proactively aggressive.
That distinction is vital for a clear-eyed view.
Absolutely, for understanding geopolitical complexities.
Okay, so these discussions about maps, history, border origins, they naturally lead us into the broader realm of geopolitics and how the source views Oli's handling of Nepal's critical relationships,
All right.
particularly with its powerful neighbors.
Exactly, that's where we head next.
So after tackling corruption allegations and contentious border history, the article really zeroes in on KP Oli's geopolitical maneuvers and what it portrays as, well, deeply questionable leadership. The source directly challenges his foreign policy approach, asking, so why was Oli picking a fight with India during the Galwan clash? Now, the Galwan clash, for our listeners, was that significant, deadly military confrontation between India and China in June 2020. The article uses this as a specific, highly sensitive instance where Oli's actions are deemed ill-advised, strategically unsound, by the author.
And what's fascinating here is the timing and context. Galwan was a moment of incredibly heightened tension, regional instability involving Nepal's two huge neighbors.
A delicate time.
Extremely. So for the author to question Oli's stance then suggests a strong belief his actions were strategically misguided or unnecessarily provocative. Nepal always has to walk this delicate diplomatic tightrope between India and China, right? Striving for neutrality, trying to maximize benefits from both.
A classic buffer state situation.
Exactly. By seemingly aligning with one or actively antagonizing the other, especially when India and China were directly confronting each other, the author implies Oli veered off this crucial path, made a tense situation worse.
Instead of cautious neutrality.
Right. Instead of maintaining that or pursuing a beneficial diplomatic path, Oli was perceived as actively antagonizing India when stability was paramount for Nepal's own security and economy.
And then the source elaborates on the relationship with India using a very interesting cultural historical argument. It states, Nepal is in India, but it is Bharatvarsha.
Yes, that use of Bharatvarsha is quite significant. It needs unpacking.
What does it mean in this context?
It transcends modern political boundaries. It taps into this shared civilizational heritage, a deep cultural, religious, historical bond connecting Nepal to the broader Indian subcontinent. Bharatvarsha is an ancient term, often referring to the land where Vedic and Puranic traditions flourished.
So shared roots.
Deeply shared roots. Hinduism, common languages like Sanskrit and its derivatives, intertwined cultural practices. By invoking this, the author is arguing that despite Nepal's sovereignty and unique identity, there's an underlying shared identity and history with India that should dictate a more harmonious, less confrontational policy.
So all these actions weren't just strategically poor, but went against this deeper connection.
That's the implication, that it is unwise to provoke a neighbor bound by such deep cultural ties, especially during a sensitive moment, without clear benefits for Nepal.
It certainly makes you consider the immense pressures on a small nation between two giants, and how a leader's choices get scrutinized.
Heavily scrutinized. Nepal's position is inherently delicate. Any leader's choices face intense scrutiny, domestically and internationally. This article reflects a segment of opinion believing Oli's approach wasn't serving Nepal's best interests, particularly by alienating India when India was in a direct dispute with China.
What were the potential consequences?
Well, the perceived miscalculation could have exposed Nepal to pressure, economic repercussions, maybe even jeopardized internal stability. The argument is, asserting sovereignty is vital, but how and when you do, it must be strategically sound, considering long-term interests.
And the allegations of corruption and hypocrisy continue, don't they? The article makes an extreme hypothetical statement. If Chinese communist laws applied, Oli would have been executed. Followed immediately by, everyone knows how corrupt he is. That connection draws a truly stark, chilling picture.
It's a truly striking, exceptionally severe rhetorical move. Invoking the harsh penalties for corruption under Chinese communist laws, which can include capital punishment, is hyperbolic. It emphasizes the sheer magnitude of Oli's alleged corruption in the author's eyes.
Not a literal call for execution, then.
No, no, more a powerful expression of utter moral outrage. It implies a level of malfeasance so severe it would warrant the most extreme punishment in a different, more draconian system. It highlights the author's profound disgust and the perceived inadequacy of Nepal's own systems to hold him accountable.
And the criticism extends to his inner circle.
Yes, equally vivid and damning. It describes Oli's kitchen cabinet, his closest advisors, as just a group of 40 thieves.
That's a powerful image, Alibaba.
Instantly recognizable, yeah, and highly evocative. It suggests widespread organized corruption at the very highest levels.
So not just individual corruption, but systemic.
That's the implication. A systemic, organized network around him engaged in illicit activities. It suggests corruption isn't isolated, but pervasive, almost institutionalized at the core of his administration. It paints a picture of an administration run like a criminal syndicate, not a legitimate government.
A complete delegitimization.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Dismantles any perception of a functional or ethical government under him.
The article also uses highly derogatory personal descriptors. Jihadi Alibaba, meat-eating gluttonous Brahmin, and questions his ideological sincerity. But he doesn't really want communism.
This is where the critique gets incredibly personal, multi-layered, deeply cutting.
Let's break those down. Jihadi Alibaba.
That's particularly loaded. Jihadi implies religious extremism, usually antithetical to the secular, often atheist ideals of communism, only in supposedly represented. It links him to fanaticism and the 40 Thieves imagery, dangerous, self-serving extremism.
And meat-eating gluttonous Brahmin.
That's a direct cultural and religious slight. Traditionally, Brahmins in Nepal often adhere to vegetarianism, exemplify austerity. Accusing him of being a gluttonous meat-eater questions his adherence to cultural norms, portrays him as a hypocrite, abusing his social standing.
And questioning his communism.
That fundamentally undercuts his ideological foundation.
Yeah.
Suggests his political posturing is disingenuous, just using the banner of communism for personal power, not genuine conviction.
So all these descriptors work together.
To utterly delegitimize Oli, portraying him as hypocritical, morally corrupt, culturally disrespectful, ideologically insincere. It reflects extreme animosity, aiming to dismantle his public image from every angle.
Finally, on geopolitics, the article addresses the Lipulekh dispute, that border issue with India. It argues if Nepal's claim was legitimate, it had two respectable paths. Either Nepal should have carried out military action, or it should have respectfully negotiated with India.
Right, this highlights the source's preference for clarity, directness, decisive action in foreign policy. A stark, binary choice.
Military action seems unlikely, though.
Highly improbable against India, yes. But it's presented as the ultimate assertion of sovereignty. The second option, respectful negotiation, emphasizes direct, serious, constructive diplomacy.
So these are seen as the only legitimate ways.
According to the author, yes. Demonstrating an expectation for strong, transparent, principled leadership in international relations, especially on vital national interests.
And the article explicitly rejects what it sees as Oli's actual method. It says, not followed China's sneaky style of needling.
Yes, that's a direct criticism of what the author perceives as a manipulative, indirect, provocative approach, possibly influenced by China, rather than a direct sovereign engagement.
What does sneaky style of needling imply?
It suggests underhanded, indirect tactics, maybe designed to provoke India without genuinely seeking resolution, like repeatedly making small moves to assert claims or provoke a response without full confrontation, sometimes called salami slicing.
And linking it to China.
That suggests Oli might have been adopting a foreign, maybe opportunistic approach, not a genuinely Nepali one rooted in direct diplomacy or clear assertion of sovereignty. Implying such an indirect, potentially manipulative approach is detrimental to Nepal's standing and interests, especially with India. It erodes trust, complicates long-term relations.
So from this article's perspective, we have a leader failing on multiple fronts: corruption, history, geopolitics.
That's the picture painted.
But now, what about alternatives? What are the perceived missed opportunities for Nepal according to this source?
Right, the article does shift towards that.
We've covered a lot of the critique: corruption, history, geopolitics. Now the article shifts to what it sees as a viable alternative, offering lessons from regional diplomacy, potential economic prosperity.
Yes.
This source offers a direct comparison, a clear recommendation. It states, if you want to know the benefits of improving relations with India, just ask Bhutan.
That's a powerful rhetorical device, isn't it? Pointing directly to Bhutan.
Why Bhutan specifically?
It provides this concrete, real-world example Another smaller, landlocked Himalayan neighbor that has arguably successfully leveraged its relationship with India for significant economic benefit.
So it moves beyond abstract arguments.
Exactly. Moves beyond theory to tangible economic prosperity. Offers a clear vision of what Nepal, in the author's view, could gain from a different, more pragmatic approach with India.
What's the nature of Bhutan's relationship with India?
It's a long-standing, unique relationship formalized by treaties of friendship, allows for close strategic cooperation. The author uses Bhutan's success as a direct counterexample to Oli's perceived failures, implying Nepal is missing out due to his leadership and confrontational policy, basically suggesting Nepal should learn from its peers.
And it highlights a very specific outcome. Look at the hydro money flowing in, referring to Bhutan's revenue from hydropower project developed with India.
Indeed. That phrase, hydro money flowing in, is a potent illustration of tangible economic advantages from good diplomatic ties.
How significant is hydro for Bhutan?
It's a cornerstone of their economy, largely developed with Indian investment and expertise, and India is the main buyer of the electricity. Projects like Chutiya, Tala, Punasangchu, they've transformed Bhutan's economy. Big contributions to GDP, export revenue, funding public services.
And for Nepal, with similar potential.
Exactly. For a landlocked, mountainous nation like Nepal, sharing vast hydropower potential, this example is particularly resonant. The author implicitly argues that while Nepal and India have discussed hydro projects, they've often stalled or been contentious, not delivering Bhutan-level benefits.
So the contrast underscores the belief that a stable, trusting relationship with India could unlock huge economic potential.
Which Oli, from their perspective, squandered. This point is highly relevant for you, the listener, to understand the practical, real-world implications of foreign policy, connecting it directly to national economic well-being, citizen prosperity.
It really drives home that foreign policy isn't just abstract ideals. It has concrete impacts on the economy, development, daily lives.
It absolutely does. It underscores the author's fundamental belief. Sound, pragmatic foreign policy, especially with a powerful interconnected neighbor, should directly boost national prosperity and stability.
And the perceived absence of that in Nepal.
Coupled with the alleged antagonizing of India, reinforces the author's overall negative assessment of Oli, portraying him as someone prioritizing political posturing over concrete economic advancement.
Which leads us to the source's final, overarching critique of his approach. It claims he never negotiates with India, but inside Nepal, he riles up the public.
Yeah, that really highlights a fundamental, deeply cynical critique of his leadership style.
Explain that contrast.
Well, the sharp, almost accusatory contrast is between his external and internal actions. The author basically accuses him of profound hypocrisy, avoiding serious, constructive diplomatic engagement with India on crucial matters.
But internally,
simultaneously prioritizing internal political agitation, nationalist rhetoric within Nepal. It suggests a leader strategically using public sentiment, often through provocative language, nationalist narratives, as a tool for domestic political gain, consolidating power.
rather than doing the hard work of diplomacy.
Exactly. Rather than the hard, often less glamorous, but ultimately more effective work of international relations and respectful negotiation. It paints a picture of a leader more concerned with rallying a base, distracting the public, than achieving concrete diplomatic outcomes beneficial to the nation long term.
A critique of leadership prioritizing political expediency over statesmanship.
Precisely.
And this statement serves as the final exasperated rhetorical question to the reader. Now do you see why KP Oli is called a fool? Chutiya. It's the culmination of all the arguments, tying everything together into this powerful, direct conclusion.
Exactly. This is where all those previous points powerfully converge. The corruption allegations, the perceived historical misrepresentations, the border issues, the geopolitical missteps, antagonizing India, the alleged hypocrisy as a communist, the confrontational domestic approach.
All woven together.
Meticulously woven together by the author to form the collective reasons for their incredibly harsh judgment. The article systematically builds its case, piece by piece, economic, historical, political, cultural arguments to lead the reader to the specific, intensely critical, personal conclusion.
A comprehensive indictment.
From the very specific, engaged perspective of this publication, yes, a comprehensive and passionate indictment of Oli's legitimacy and competence as a leader.
All these points, from selling national assets, illicit wealth funding his residence, to diplomatic missteps, a perceived hypocritical political stance lacking genuine negotiation, They all converge,
Right.
demonstrating how the author believes Oli's actions or inactions contribute to that perception of him being a fool. It's a comprehensive takedown from this specific viewpoint.
It truly is. A detailed, passionate articulation of deep-seated dissatisfaction with a prominent political figure. The author uses every angle, economic, historical, political, cultural, personal, to construct this powerful, damning indictment. It reveals the complex layers of criticism that can exist around a leader in a dynamic political environment.
And how these narratives intertwine to shape public opinion.
And political discourse, absolutely.
So we've just taken a truly deep dive into an incredibly critical perspective on KP Oli, drawn from that Democracy for Nepal article. We've explored serious allegations of corruption, Mahakali River, Tanakpur, Pancheshwar, and how they were allegedly linked to personal wealth, like the Water Palace.
We also examined the source's challenging views on historical border treaties, like the 1816 Treaty in the Madhese region, and its profound skepticism towards symbolic maps like the pointed map, dismissively likened to Oli's nose.
Right, and we unpacked that counter-narrative on India's inherited borders legacy of British rule, not post-independence aggression, reframing historical grievances.
And we dug deep into the strong criticisms of Oli's geopolitical strategy. His perceived ill-advised stance during Galwan, his relations with India, contrasted with the concept of Bharatvarsha. Plus those scathing personal and ideological critiques, the group of 40 thieves questioning his communist sincerity, using potent cultural slurs.
And finally, we look at the source's preferred approaches to disputes like Lipulek military action or respectful negotiation, rejecting the sneaky style of needling, and holding up Bhutan as an example of economic benefits from good relations with India, the hydro money flowing in.
Contrasting that with Oli's alleged tendency to rile up the public instead of negotiating.
The article asks, why is KP Oli called a fool? Chutiya. And as we've explored, the author systematically presents this comprehensive range of arguments selling rivers, illicit wealth, diplomatic missteps, hypocrisy, all converging to form that highly critical conclusion.
Right.
This deep dive hopefully has allowed us, and you, to understand the multifaceted reasons this specific source uses such strong, unflinching language.
And understanding this kind of source, it isn't about agreeing or disagreeing with its claims, is it?
No, not at all.
Instead, it's about appreciating the diverse, often passionately held narratives and arguments that profoundly shape public discourse around leaders and national issues. It shows us how complex factors history, economics, integrity perceptions, international relations intertwine to form powerful, often polarizing public opinions.
Opinions that drive political movements and shape a nation's future.
Exactly.
So as we consider these deeply critical perspectives, these multifaceted accusations in such a dynamic region, what does it truly take for a leader to gain, or maybe irreparably lose, the trust of their own people? And how do those often fierce internal dynamics ultimately play out on the global stage, shaping a nation's destiny and its relationships with the world?
A profound question to reflect on.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dives. We hope this has given you a clearer, more informed, and definitely more nuanced understanding of these complex issues.